We begin, though, tonight, keeping them honest, with a look at how President Trump and his supporters may plan to battle back. The plan is outlined in a memo drafted by Republican staffers on the Hill and circulated to GOP members on key committees. And it's important to look closely at this memo because whatever you may think of the president or the case that he tried to extort Ukraine's president for political gain, there is a lot in these talking points which are just not true. So let's look at talking point number one for Republicans to use when discussing the Ukraine affair. The rough summary of the July 25th phone call shows no conditionality or evidence of pressure. Now, this is not quite as far as what the president, of course, has been saying.
That call was a great call. It was a perfect call. A perfect call.
So Republicans will be saying, yeah, maybe not perfect, but there was no pressure in the call. Now, take a look. Here's the key sentence from the rough call transcript. Immediately after Ukraine's President Zelensky asked about the military assistance his country has yet to see, the president says right away, I would like you to do us a favor, though, clearly connecting the favor to the aid. He then asked for investigations of the 2016 election, and then later, the other thing, which is the Bidens, investigating them. No talk of corruption in general, no list of Ukrainians the president thinks should be investigated, no list from the Treasury Department of Ukrainians who are on a watch list. No, it's the Bidens and 2016. And of course, many of the impeachment witnesses have already substantiated this behind closed doors. But in any event, the best evidence of what the president wanted comes from the president himself.
Mr. President, what exactly did you hope Zelensky would do about the Bidens after your phone call? Exactly.
Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer.
Which brings us to Republican talking point number two, namely that neither side saw anything improper about the call. Now, that has been a familiar refrain from the president's defenders all along, including today.
Well, the bottom line is the only two people that are at the heart of this are President Trump and President Zelensky, and we've already seen the transcripts. So what other people think about a conversation is really secondary to the fact that the two men that were participating in the conversation both said it was a good call.
Or put another way, Congressman Scalise is saying that the alleged extortionist and his alleged victim agree that nothing happened. Now, others were on the call. Some have already testified to what they heard. NSC staffer Alexander Vindman saying, quote, there was no ambiguity and, quote, no doubt about what the president was doing. So that makes them 0 for 2 so far. Furthermore, the New York Times has reported about concern among Ukrainian officials about the pressure to investigate by Trump and Giuliani. Pressure they came close, according to the Times, to giving into in order to get the held-up aid. So let's see how talking point 3 stands up to the facts. Here it is, that the Ukrainians were not even aware that the military aid had been frozen. This is an oldie but a goodie. In fact, testimony throughout the closed-door hearings, including from witness Catherine Croft, released just yesterday, suggests the Ukrainians knew very early in the affair that the aid had been frozen by the Office of Management and Budget. And finally, there's talking point 4. You can call it no harm, no foul. No investigations were done, and the aid eventually flowed, so no problem. Nikki Haley has lately been making this argument. Kellyanne Conway has, and others. But keeping them honest, the aid only began flowing nearly a year after it was approved by Congress, shortly after the whistleblower complaint became known to the administration. So there's no telling how this holdup impacted the fight in Ukraine. Did people die because of the holdup? And again, according to the Times, Ukraine officials were close to giving in to the extortion, but then came the whistleblower. So furthermore, as many legal minds have also pointed out, attempted bribery and attempted extortion are still considered crimes. We're now on those new signs of infighting at the White House. Let's go to Jim Acosta for that. So what are you learning?
Anderson, it's a picture of chaos as the president heads into this very different phase for him in the impeachment inquiry, very public phase with officials testifying in front of the cameras up on Capitol Hill. Anderson, my colleagues and I over here at the White House are hearing from our sources that when Mick Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff, started these legal maneuverings a few days ago. First, he was going to join this lawsuit in federal court that would determine whether or not he should respond to these congressional subpoenas up on Capitol Hill and testify. And then yesterday, he decided he's going to pull out of that legal challenge and pose his own legal challenge, file his own lawsuit. And then this morning we found out he's scrapping the whole thing altogether and he's going back to the original legal guidance from the administration that he's immune from testifying under the subpoena that has been issued for his testimony. And Anderson, what we're hearing from our sources is that the White House counsel's office is very upset about this. The president is very upset about this. They are aggravated with Mick Mulvaney for opening up this Pandora's box right before these public hearings get started. In the words of one official inside the administration, what in the hell was he thinking? And Anderson, what it shows to us heading into these hearings is that, there is a lot of infighting and chaos going on behind the scenes in this administration at a very critical moment for the president.
Is there, how are they gearing up for the televised hearings?
Well, we understand that the White House is trying to put up this rapid response team. They've been talking about this for weeks. I just talked to a source just in the last couple of hours who said that not all of those team members are in place, that the paperwork is still being put through for some key members of that rapid response team. The Trump campaign is going to be doing its own war room, its own rapid response in terms of what is coming out of these hearings. But you do get this answer, Anderson, from the White House and the Trump campaign, the Republicans up on Capitol Hill, that they're all sort of working off different and somewhat dated talking points. They're all trying to say the same thing, that the president did nothing wrong. But now the public is going to get a chance to decide for themselves, watching this in living color. Yeah.
And of course, the question, I assume the president will be watching the proceedings, though the White House usually says, oh, no, he's not. He's very busy. But
right.
We know he watches, even in normal times.
He watches everything. That's right. He watches us all the time, and he watches Fox to make himself feel better. But Anderson, my understanding is that yes, the president will be watching these proceedings. He's going to be glued to his TV, as always, with smartphone in hand, ready to respond. The question is just how he responds to all of this. And I talked to a source close to the White House earlier who said the president has pushed out of this administration, pushed out of this West Wing, all of the people who push back on him. And so the message coming from this one source is an alarming one, and that is that the president is likely to be pretty unrestrained when it comes to all of his responses to what we're about to hear later on this week, Anderson.